Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Episode 308. Today, Jenny, we are diving deep into something that, for years, felt like science fiction. Graphene, specifically. How it's poised to turn the entire electronics world on its head.
Mark, I've heard the whispers about graphene for ages, It's always felt like that material of the future that just kind of stays times the future. But from what I understand, 2025 is the year it actually delivers. So, what's changed?
You hit the nail on the head there. For years, the big problem with graphene was its lack of a band gap. Think of microchips like light switches. Silicon has a band gap, so you can turn it on and off. Graphene, in its natural state, is more like always on, which makes it not work as a semiconductor. Until now.
So it was always superconductive, which sounds great, but you couldn't control it. Like a light switch stuck in the on position perpetually. How in the world do you fix that?
This, Jenny, is the aha moment you mentioned. In January 2024, a team at Georgia Tech, led by Dr. Walter DeHayer, figured out how to create the first times graphene semiconductor. They called it epitaxial graphene.
Okay, epitaxial graphene sounds very fancy. What's the trick here? What's the secret sauce?
They grew graphene on silicon carbide wafers. Imagine you're baking a cake, but the pan itself changes the properties of the cake. By heating silicon carbide, the silicon atoms sublimate off, leaving just the carbon in this perfect hexagonal lattice structure that forms graphene. But because it's grown on that silicon carbide, it naturally gets the band gap it needs. It's like the pan forces the cake to be perfect.
So, the base material actually forces graphene to behave like a semiconductor? That's quite clever. And the result? What does that mean for an actual chip?
The result is a graphene semiconductor with 10 times the electron mobility of silicon. 10 times! That means chips that are radically faster and use far less power. And get this, they've already demonstrated transistors that hit over 300 gigahertz.
Okay, that's not just an improvement, that's a whole new league of performance. And if it's grown on silicon carbide, does that mean chip manufacturers can just slot this into their existing factories? Because that's usually the biggest hurdle for new materials, right? The retooling costs. They're immense.
Exactly. That's the other part of the brilliance. It's compatible with conventional microelectronics processing. You don't need to rebuild trillion-dollar fabs. You just, in theory, swap out the base material for some steps. This is why Intel has already partnered with Georgia Tech for AI Accelerator R&D for AI, of all things.
That's huge for adoption. It lowers the barrier to entry significantly. But compatible doesn't mean easy, right? How are we doing on the mass production side? Because 10 times faster is great, but not if it costs a fortune to make one chip.
Oh, this is the even cooler part. 2025 is turning out to be the year graphene transitions from the lab to mass industrialization. Remember the cost? In 2023, CVD graphene, like the stuff that was going to be the next big thing, was around $100 per square meter.
That's pretty steep for widespread use, especially for consumer electronics.
It was. But now, we're seeing it drop to $30 to $50 per square meter. And it's not just cost, it's consistency. The latest reports show defect rates are now less than 0.1% for semiconductor applications. They're using AI-driven atomic repair to heal the graphene. Imagine a tiny surgeon with a laser fixing imperfections at an atomic level.
AI fixing defects on a material that's basically one atom thick. That's wild. So, cheaper, faster, fewer defects. What does this mean for the practical products we might see first? Beyond just faster computers, I mean.
Well, for starters, flexible electronics are about to get a whole lot more flexible and efficient. Think bendable screens that actually work, or clothing with integrated sensors. But for me, the most impactful area is medical devices. Have you heard about INBRAIN neuroelectronics?
I haven't. Tell me more. I love how often cutting-edge materials like this find their way into health applications. It's such an inspiring crossover, isn't it?
They're using graphene field effect transistors, GFETs, as neural implants. Think about detecting epilepsy. Traditionally, you use metal electrodes, but those can cause scarring in the brain over time, which is not great. Graphene, because it's so thin and biocompatible, avoids that. It's like the brain hardly knows it's there.
So, less invasive brain interfaces? That's already enormous.
Exactly. And get this, their graphene biosensors can detect pre-seizure biomarkers with 95% accuracy in clinical trials. 95% there. They're picking up on subtle electrical activity changes that regular electrodes, like the metal ones, just can't see. Imagine the foresight.
95% accuracy for predicting seizures. That's truly life-changing for patients and families. It might sound dramatic, but it brings tears to my eyes thinking about the impact this could have. The relief. The peace of mind.
It's incredible, right? And it's not just epilepsy. They're showing 10 times higher sensitivity to dopamine than silicon FETs, which could mean breakthroughs in Parkinson's research, deep brain stimulation. The list just goes on and on.
So from high-performance computing to direct neural interfaces, it sounds like graphene is pretty much touching everything now. What about the power efficiency angle you mentioned earlier? Because our data centers are just sucking up energy at an unsustainable rate these days.
This is where graphene shines even brighter. When you have 10 times the mobility, you translate that directly into lower power consumption. For AI data centers, which are just massive energy hogs, graphene chips are showing significantly lower power requirements. We're talking about a potential 80% reduction in power for AI accelerators compared to current silicon chips. Think of the carbon footprint reduction.
80%. That's not just an improvement, that's a new paradigm. That's revolutionary for everything from climate impact to operational costs. Our power grids might actually thank graphene.
And it makes them run cooler. Less heat means less cooling infrastructure, which saves even more energy. Think about 6G networks, which will demand even more bandwidth and processing power. Graphene could make them not just possible, but sustainable at that scale.
So it makes sense from an energy perspective and clearly from a performance perspective. But then there's the ethical side, particularly with these medical applications. The report mentioned a $50,000 cost for these implants. That's a huge barrier for most people, isn't it?
It absolutely is. If we have this incredible technology that can predict seizures with 95% accuracy, how do we ensure it's accessible to everyone who needs it? Right now, in Europe, the EU Graphene Flagship Program and national healthcare systems are mandating up to 70% coverage for these graphene epilepsy devices. So there's a pathway.
That's a good start, for sure. But what about the US? Are we lagging there?
Unfortunately, yes. The US is lagging. Insurance reimbursement is complex, and getting FDA approval for entirely new material-based medical devices is a long, arduous road. We're looking at potentially a 2 to 3 year delay for US patients to access these devices compared to Europeans. That's a pretty serious ethical dilemma, in my opinion.
It really is. When you have a medical breakthrough that's that profound, the question of who gets it and when becomes paramount. Should materials like graphene, especially in medical applications, be treated differently from other commercial products in terms of pricing and access? It feels like they should, right?
That's the big debate happening right now, for sure. And it's not just about cost. The report also highlights that the cost is projected to drop by 60% by 2027 as production scales. So while it's high now, there's hope for wider accessibility soon. But that doesn't help someone today.
That's encouraging, at least. So on the one hand, we have a material that's breaking performance barriers, enabling entirely new medical treatments, and making our computing greener. On the other, we have to grapple with the social and ethical implications of its adoption, balancing innovation with accessibility.
Exactly. Graphene has exited the valley of death, as they call it, that phase where a promising technology struggles to move from lab to a broader market. It's crossed that hurdle. Now the conversation shifts from, can we make it work, to, how do we best integrate it into our world, and make it fair for everyone.
And fast, it seems, because with 10 times the speed of silicon and AI-driven production, it feels like this adoption could happen quicker than we might expect. It's a testament to long-term funding and strategic research, like the EU Graphene Flagship, finally paying off. They've been at this for a decade, quietly working away.
Such a good point. It's easy to forget that these sudden breakthroughs are often the result of years of dedicated, sometimes frustrating, work. Graphene is proof that persistence, strategic investment, and brilliant minds can reshape the future, one atom at a time.
What a journey for a material discovered just 20 years ago. From a lab curiosity to potentially redefining electronics and medicine as we know it. Mark, thank you for breaking this down. My brain feels like it just had a graphene upgrade, honestly.
Mine too, Jenny. It's always a privilege for me to talk about these things. And thank you everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the world of graphene. Definitely keep an eye on this space. We're just at the beginning of this new era of electronics.
Indeed. You can find all the resources and research we discussed in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, stay curious.
See ya!